Even as the Steelers were as undisciplined as they were off the field, they coasted to a strong lead by halftime. Despite the so-called cruise control, the Steelers proceeded to let the foot off the gas and turtle. The result was Tampa Bay lining up their ships next to the trauma-laden Steelers fort as they nearly blow a 20-point lead. Despite all attempts from the defense to reinforce that they are indeed terrible, Pittsburgh escapes with a lucky victory. Regardless of the media narrative changing, this win proceeds to leave the Pittsburgh faithful with more questions than answers. Does this team have any sort of self-control? Can this defense even stop a light breeze? Will they be relying on Captain Fatfuck to bail them out of every situation? Or will they have to force passes to the diva so he can shut the hell up? As I fear that this season is peaking far too early, it's time to conclude another episode of Days of Our Steelers. Hope to God I never have to split this off again. This week on Days of Our Steelers, we tried our damn hardest to put this into sports ball, but they had to make it too juicy to combine once again. The story begins after last week's near snagging of defeat from the Buccaneers, as Captain Fatfuck suffers allegations of diving on a certain roughing the passer cause. Knowing the jig is up, Big Ben admits that, unsurprisingly, he imitated Neymar on the football field. Perhaps he learned such technique from the rape allegations, who knows? Despite his diving and off-sync throws downfield, the real star this week is Le'Veon Bell. He's like Moses, except instead of 40 years in the desert, he's partying it up in Miami. Let my payments flow, his eternal cry shall be. Former Steelers linebacker James Harrison knows of his plight and has some sound advice for him. Show up and sign the tender as late as possible, then fake injuries do not be forced to carry the ball 30 times a game. Of course, who couldn't trust the wisdom of James Harrison of all people? Mark Madden couldn't. He took a break from eating Yenzer adoration lathered with hot sauce to rightfully call him an asshole. James Harrison calls an audible from the Antonio Brown playbook. He threatens violence against the radio host. Mike Mitchell, not knowing when to shut the fuck up, chirps in from the sidelines about the so-called haters that ran him onto the unemployment line. The football game taking place is one of critical importance to the Black and Gold Brigade. It's against their hated rival, the Baltimore Ravens, at home. Appearances need to be kept. The Ravens are thinking they are hot shots. They need to be put back in their place. The Steelers flex their muscles, eat their spinach, and promptly shit themselves early as they fall behind 14-0. Pittsburgh was shown mercy as the Ravens made several key mistakes that prevented them from running up the score. The Steelers even tied up the game. Yinzers everywhere were preparing for a night of lotion and Kleenex tissue. The Ravens were ready to die. And then the offense proceeded to do nothing. Who knew that calling a one-dimensional game with no running plays would make a team predictable? It also doesn't help that nobody in the passing game is in sync. The rest of the NFL would have a clinic on how to stop this offense. You sprinkle Old Bay all over the field and felt them with soft shell. 47 yards of total offense. That's all that was mustered in the second half. The defense was once again reminiscent of a landfill. Shit.
No, he didn't do it.
The Ravens offense imposed their will
He
on the
messed up.
tattered curtain. Not even Renegade
That's
can allow
why
the
he
team
was
to do
over,
anything of note.
man.
Like
That's
seriously,
messed up.
how the fuck does somebody on this defense know how to make a fucking tackle?
I wasn't
How many
competing.
first
He
and
didn't
second round picks
play
we used on these
man-to-man.
and we somehow not allow them to gain 4 or 5 yards after first contact?
Bad
That's one of
game.
the worst defenses
I'm
I've
pressing
personally
buttons,
seen this
man.
team have. How the fuck is everyone on the team pretending this shit is fine? This is a fucking disgrace.
You know what I mean? Yo, that's just bad game.
The final score of this affair does not tell the true story
Bad-
here. The game was a
bad
total
gaming is when you
embarrassment
press
for
the button
Steelers.
and it's not
Absolute
working.
domination by a once inferior division rival. Baltimore themselves weren't happy with their offensive output, as they felt they could have scored far more than what they did. This is the reality of the Steelers. Hard questions need to be pondered. Maybe the Black and Gold Brigade is just a bad team. Perhaps the window of Super Bowl contention has slammed shut. Full-blown
Take
panic
it
is
to all
setting
the
in for the
way,
Steel
man.
City. Pittsburgh
He's just
will
playing
remain
a little-
miserable and angry and
that
every
route,
left
man.
for the
He's
remainder of the work
25
week.
spots.
Le'Veon
Defend it,
believe
man.
it's his job to
Stay
this
in
team's
the corner.
self-destruction. We
Yeah.
conclude another episode of Days of Our Steelers.
Oh, yeah, man.
This week on Days of Our Steelers, the prodigal son makes an announcement to the hope-starved citizens of Pittsburgh. Le'Veon Bell has been up struggling with the sunshine and relaxation in the oasis of Miami. His rap ambitions have been realized with the official release of his EP and desires to return
Somebody
to the
got
football
these.
field. He has allegedly chosen his day to return. Week 7.
That's
Yes, Week 7. This also coincides with the Steelers' bye week, so it should lead to less wear and tear on his Herculean body. Even as the offensive linemen ponder why he's taking so goddamn long, there may be hope for the Black and Gold Brigade. Well, except for the Steelers' brats. Angry and vengeful at their wayward running back, they may be flirting with the idea of a 2-week roster exemption for Le'Veon, thus potentially robbing him of another 7 figures in salary. Punitive punishments are truly the Steeler way, especially for a bell cow like Le'Veon. Meanwhile, in the diva circles, Antonio Brown is frustrated with the passing attack. He compared it to a spotty Wi-Fi connection. Not like a bad provider, more like that shitty hotel Wi-Fi that is slow as hell and keeps cutting out because it's a dick. Once again, truly a man who understands the real world. The game this week is all but crucial for both teams. The Steelers and Falcons desperately need wins to keep their playoff ambitions in decent health. Despite massive questions that remain for the Black and Gold Brigade, they played the most complete, well-rounded game of the season. They physically dominated the line on both sides of the ball and... It appears I'm looking at the wrong implosion. Time for an audible.
This week on General Hospital, the hopes and ambitions for the Atlanta Falcons season takes a massive turn for the worse as David drowns in the Three Rivers. Joining the cast in the hospital ward is their starting defensive tackle, Brady Garrett. A devastating blow for a defense shot to pieces. In yet another embarrassing affair, the flightless Deathbats unleashed a horrific sickness upon their fan base and shot themselves in the dick repeatedly. The autopsy to this team reveals the cause of death being, well, everything. A few unnecessary penalties, more drunken play calling by Sarkisian, the offensive line collapsing like the lungs of these Falcons, and that defense. Oh boy, that defense is something special, isn't it? The Falcons' D is a lot like a Fabergé egg. Ornate, delicate, and beautiful. And then some bastard checked it against the wall, shattering it into a billion pieces and exposing its hollow remains. James Conner bull rushes the carcass and pisses on its ashes. By the way, have another in-game entry to Tack McKinley. Oh yes, Tack. Big Ben saw you, and you cramped up like the defense.
He wasn't even playing, man. You got the computer playing, man. Come on, man. Yeah,
Burns by Antonio Brown.
I ain't gotta
He
get
warned
in there,
his
yo.
failure by allowing a team with a sketchy pass rush to feast on Matty Ice all game long. The Falcons and their once hyped season are now on life support. Battered and beaten by a series of painful defeats and embarrassments that make 28-3 almost look routine. In a stacked NFC South, Atlanta is the odd ones looking inward. At 1-4, the season is all but finished in name only. What will these sickening birds do to mend the tide? Will Matt Ryan and the offense find ways to bail them out? Oh right, the defense is still whacked to shit. You're fucked. His failure to succeed with the talent at your disposal will probably cost Dan Quinn his job. Have a nice afterlife on the unemployment line. At least for one day, the drama-laden circus of the Steelers gets to flaunt and ballyhoo about going to the Super Bowl and fancy themselves beating New England. Like the Falcons' playoff hopes, General Hospital will fade to black.
There's nothing like a strong victory. There's no way the Steelers can fuck this up. This week, on Days of Our Steelers. They blocked me on Twitter.
You get it! Come
I didn't
on!
even directly tweet or message these people. They just blocked me like a pulling to Castro. How long until the death squads come after me? This week, on Days of Our Steelers, the Diva tries his hardest to improve Wi-Fi connectivity in Florida and on the football field. No stranger to the spotlight, Antonio Brown apparently had an off-season to remember. Not only did his likeness get blasted on the earlier than anyone else, flashback to a sunny day. Antonio Brown is returning to his loft in Florida after more than likely strutting his peacock feathers for the loving camera. There was something amiss though. He believes he had been robbed of valuable possessions. The prize is stolen $80,000 in the gun. With all of that money, a safe to hold these items is deemed obsolete in Antonio's eyes. To him, this was like losing a remote, but much more sinister. Antonio has been crossed. There is only one logical explanation. He was set up by apartment security. In an impulsive fit of rage, Brown proceeds to do what most reasonable people do in this situation. Chuck furniture out the window of a 14th floor balcony. Little did he know the gods of fate were not on his side. The furniture and vases he threw for glory nearly hit a toddler and his grandfather. The poor child was a foot or two away from being directly hit, and now this boy is suffering night terrors and further trauma, anguish that no one deserves. Brown may be pleading his innocence, but he is currently being subpoenaed for 2 lawsuits. One by the landlord, and one by the father of the toddler. The suits allege that Brown was belligerent and yelling at security, further proving how much of a likable guy he is off the field. A spin on the wheel of discipline is in the realm of possibility. Head coach Mike Tomlin again chooses to cover his ears and ignore the noise around him. There is football that needs to be played, but there is one thing he needs to mention. The blatant ref fault that is hurting his team. The bullfrog criticized officials, huffing and puffing that he was pissed at how they were ruining the game. The rules are ridiculous, he said. Unfortunately for him, one thing the NFL does not like is being called out for their bullshit. He was told a fine of $25,000 to the NFL's concussion status fund. In this regard, the Ginger Hammer always wins. The hammer was also used to strike a blow for the Indianapolis Colts. Battered by a ridiculous string of injuries, they are forced to settle for a new acquisition. Former Steeler Mike Mitchell. Now they will know the horrors of his piss-poor tackling form in a mouth that would make Furby seem like a mute in comparison. Mitchell does have a theory as to why he couldn't get a job. Eric Reed and his social protests during the anthem. No, Mike, it has nothing to do with the glut of veteran safeties on the market or your terrible performance. It's to do with the guy taking a fucking knee. Someone get duct tape so he can shut the fuck up for once. He can learn from Le'Veon Bell in this regard. Despite boasting that he would return on the Steelers' bye week, neither he nor his agent have made contact with the organization.
Are you kidding me?
It's probably one of those things where he pops out of a sack in the box and starts a civil war with James Conner just because. In other news, Juju Smith-Schuster gave birth to
I want my rematch.
The beginnings of fatherhood are forming.
I want my fucking rematch.
On a onesie in the Steelers' locker room. Drama aside, today's matchup is against a team that the Steelers have consistently found joy in beating. The Bungles. Winners of 6 straight against this irrelevant franchise, the Black and Gold Brigade takes the field on a misty Sunday ready to maintain the narrative. Cincinnati, however, has other plans. They are off to a hot start this season, boasting a 4-1 record, and a victory against the Steel City will go a long way to legitimizing them. As no one on either side can make a catch, the affair turns into the gritty physical affair commonplace in these matches. James Conner did more to prove that the Steelers don't really need Le'Veon to have a strong running game. He beat those defenders like he beat cancer. He says that he doesn't want to be known as the guy that beat cancer, but television wants cheap talking points and everyone wants to beat the shit out of cancer. By the way, has anyone mentioned on this broadcast that he beat cancer yet? Another glorious sight is the eternal homage of Montez Perfect, who chose to try and kill Antonio Brown yet again by means of targeting. As the most beloved man of Pittsburgh, Steelers fans cheered as he was repeatedly owned by the tank known as Vance McDonald and Connor. Despite these strong performances, the terrible defense showed its ugly face as Artie Burns was torched like the Reichstag and proved his first-round pedigree. Cincinnati boasted the lead in the skirmish with a minute and change left. This is usually a bad omen for the Bungles, as they have always found unique ways to crumble, but this is a different team. The Escalooser has closed down and victory shall be drank. Little did they know they were fooling themselves. The high-end talent of the Steelers bailed out the team from certain defeats, like they have done many times over the past few years. They did get some help from a that was eager to bend over and take their domination on all fours. The Bungles once again bungled. Cincinnati is staring at the status quo. The Bungles are to Pittsburgh as the Steelers are to New England. They cannot beat them. This now marks the 7th straight victory over their doormat with no end in sight. Perhaps they should have tried throwing furniture as they've been on the final play instead of blitzing everybody. As they ponder this course of action, the Escalooser is back in business. The Bungles had a statement win in their grasp and let it slip away yet again. The Steelers' ambitions of the Super Bowl are kicked back into overdrive. As they go into the bye week, we can only hope that the drama ends. Who the hell am I kidding? This is going to keep happening all season. At least there is one comforting fact for the Steelers. They are once again ahead of Cleveland in the standings. Like cancer metastasizing throughout the team's body, so are the days of our Steelers.
It's in your nature to work smarter. You can do that. Freedom is in ours.
This week, on Days of Our Steelers, a lesson is learned as to why you can't trust hearsay, even if it's reported by reputable news sources. Several weeks ago, the prodigal son Le'Veon Bell boasted to private sources that he would return to the Steelers home base in Week 7 of the bye week. Despite
Yeah,
this,
warm up
the team
and
has heard
shit.
from neither Bell nor his
Don't
agent.
think niggas ain't nice that I
Survivors
play.
know football
The people that I
coach
play
Le'Veon
is
has
good.
still not returned to the team.
He was doing
Even if the
something,
trade is
and
not
I'm
made,
thinking
there is a
about
chance
it,
that
and
Bell
I
will not
understand now.
return for the season. The impasse continues. Juju Smith-Schuster, however, is an optimist. He believes that he
Yeah,
can
get
bring
warmed
Bell
up.
back into
The level I
the
play
slot.
in,
The Mega
we ain't
Blue
ready.
is his ticket to Le'Veon's
That's what happens to you.
100 of them to be exact.
So when I got
With no
here,
good plans, it bursts into flame.
must have been a
It
crazy
does not
motherfucker
work.
on TV.
Le'Veon will not get his money to join the team. Coming back was not amusing. He believes everyone is trying to be Kevin Hart and get a laugh at his expense. No, sir, you just happened to do that.